This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, the very best podcast for regular comic book fans. I'm your host, Mike Rapin, and joining me this week, two characters hidden between the gutters of the last comic I was reading. This week, I'm joined by Brian Murray.
Hello.
One and only special guest for this episode, Cavan Scott.
Hello there.
Thank you both for joining me. I'm super excited to talk about comic books with the both of you. Cavan, you are a special guest on this show. So I guess before we get into that, I should say, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you've been doing, and maybe just a tad about the book that you've got coming out this week?
Sure. My name's Cavan Scott, as we said. You could probably tell from the accent that I'm a Brit. I have been probably best known over the last few years for working on Star Wars: The High Republic. Over Lucasfilm, I was one of the original creators of that entire era of Star Wars. I've been writing the Marvel comic throughout, writing various comics for IDW and Dark Horse as well over the time. I have a few create your own titles out. Night of the Slashers is the latest one from Magma. And I'm here to talk about Gwenpool issue 1, which comes out this week from Marvel, which is my next Marvel book, which reintroduces a certain ex-girlfriend of Peter Parker's to the Marvel Universe in a slightly different way.
Interesting. You know, I have so many questions about that, but we have to pause and we have to wait. We'll get into that at the end of the show.
Okay.
For now, I have two legally mandated questions that I have to ask for this show, and that is, how have you been and how have comic books been? So I'm going to pitch right back to you, Cavan. How have you been? What comics have you been reading?
Yeah, I've been doing good, thanks. What comics have I been reading? Well, I mean, I always say this. Sometimes I feel we get embarrassed about it, but I'm a superhero geek, and I will stick to to the superheroes until the day they put me in a box. So my go-to comics every month without fail, and have been for the last 40 years, are Superman and Action Comics, and I absolutely adore what they're doing over there on those books, and over on the side of the House of Ideas. It's Fantastic Four, and has been since John Byrne wrote them back in the 80s. So I still get that childish glee, and I don't think there's anything wrong with childish glee. As Doctor Who once said, what's the point of being an adult if you can't be childish every now and then? Of getting, reading a good superhero comic book. So yeah, I've been loving those books recently, and the entire thing that DC's been doing with I went dubious into the entire new multiverse thing they've got going on in DC, sure. And I was a bit like, okay, really, right, okay, and I've been loving every minute of it. So yeah, that's where I've been really in recent years.
Gotcha. Have you dug into any of the absolute books, or are you like a mainline primary continuity stuff?
Absolutely. No, I was, when I first heard about them, I was like, okay, do I need that? I think, because actually we might, as the world, might need it. For me personally, I was like, do I need that? And then I read Absolute Superman and Absolute Wonder Woman. I was like, no, I'm in, thanks. Yeah. Absolutely. No pun. Actually, every pun. So yeah, it was, I went in dubious, and I came out going, actually, no, I'm liking this. I'm liking what they're doing. So yeah, what about you? Have you been reading them?
Oh, it is a almost religious level of like dedication that I have to the absolute books, and I come from comics reading mostly Marvel, right? I've been a big Marvel person my whole life, mostly reading X-Men. And with the death of the Krakoan age of Marvel Comics, I have been searching for something that I can put my full brain into. And it seems like the absolute books are just checking the box every single month with Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, the new Green Lantern book, the Martian Manhunter book, which, I mean, like, Dennis Camp is just an unbelievable writer, and I will read anything that he does. But that book is really cool. I mean, I've been totally all in on that stuff. Which is fantastic. Every single book is better than the last. Though I will put Wonder Woman and Martian Manhunter up there, I think, as my favorite so far.
I've got Martian Manhunter on the pile at the minute to read.
Okay.
So I mean, I think, like all of us, we all have teetering to read pals all the time, and there are books that I try and keep up with, and there's some books that I savor, and I'm trying to get around that thing. As I binge read quite a lot now. And it's not even waiting for the trades. I just let the floppies pile up and then have a day when I go, right, I'm doing this. But I'm trying to
Right.
get back to the thing of saying, I could be on Instagram or I could read an issue of the Absolute Martian Manhunter. So that's my little promise to myself that I'm going to start doing that more.
Yeah, well, I think I have 3 different to be read piles scattered around my house at this point.
This is the thing, everybody out there listening. Comic writers are no different than you. We all have to read piles, and they're all huge.
I know. And also it is something we don't talk about often enough, is that sometimes the last thing you want to do is read a comic when you've spent all day working on comics. And that's no shade, because it's really hard. I get the smallest violin out. When you work in comics, you're basically doing what you've loved. And I often joke that my to-do list is the same as it was when I was 10. And I love that fact that it is. However, it means that sometimes you sort of forget that. Again, it's that the geeky joy of it. You forget that because as soon as you read something, you're going, oh, that's interesting, or I see what they're doing there, or so there are times when it's the last thing I want to do. And when I was in the middle of Star Wars and the High Republic, my daughter used to come in, and my eldest would be saying, right, are we going to watch Ahsoka tonight? I was like, no, we are not, because I've spent a day with laser swords, and the last thing I want to do is see another one. And then she was sort of waiting for that moment where I would, when Star Wars was stopped being the day job, which it was for a while, just so she can actually tie me down and say, right, we are going to watch that now, aren't we? I was like, yes, because again, it's that thing of like having that moment where it's your hobby becomes your job, and it's fantastic. But at that point, then you have to put new barriers up, because otherwise your job never ends.
Right.
And that's So I make a specific effort now to actually go no. Actually, the other book I should mention, the one I've been loving, which has nothing to do with the big two at all, is Golden Rage by Chrissy Williams. It's this is the second series at the minute, which is just perfect. It's amazing. It's something that I think everyone should. It's basically I've got a real part of my wheelhouse, I think, is older people who are I was talking about this yesterday. I think it came from liking Star Trek as a kid, but not liking the original series, which I did, but liking the movies. So I, as a child, became very invested in 50-year-old men, which is like, and I look back now, and so I have a real, whenever I read stories of grizzled heroes who are having to fight on despite the fact they're aching, I think it all goes back to James Kirk, not wanting to be 50 in the Wrath of Khan. And now I look back and I go, my God, he's younger than I am in the Wrath of Khan. Thanks, Jim. But yeah, it's the Golden Rage, if you've not read it, it's about a bunch of women who get sort of stuck together, and they have to survive, and there are women of a certain age, let's put it, and it's a sort of a survival Lord of the Flies type story, but when it's a bunch of women of a certain age instead of a load of teenage boys. So it's I read the first couple of the new series the other day, and it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've been meaning to sit down and read that, but go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I think that Golden Girls meets Lord of the Flies is a great pitch.
Yeah, that's the absolute word, and it has got that kind of you can almost hear, who would be cast in some of those roles, and you can hear the voices. So just as a complete segue from talking about superhero stuff into that, but hey, isn't that what comics is all about?
I was going to say, I have a feeling we'll be doing quite a bit of that today. So I love that. But Brian, let me kick things over to you. How have you been? How have comic books been?
I've been good. Doing a lot of video games lately, playing a lot of Monster Hunter. That's kind of been taking up my life.
Nice.
Got really invested in a 2-hour YouTube video about VTuber drama last night. But that's neither here nor there. I'm going to drag us right back into superhero comics territory, because my version of getting into the absolutes is I've been getting into Marvel's new Ultimate universe lately.
Right.
So as you know, last time I was on the show, I talked about Ultimate Spider-Man. This time it's Ultimate Black Panther Volume 1. It's written by Brian Hill with art by Stefano Caselli and Carlos Nieto. Colors by David Curiel and letters by Corey Petit. This book was great, as I've kind of come to expect from the Marvel Ultimates. I'm sure I'll be let down at some point. Nothing good can last forever. But every book I've read so far has been a little more enjoyable than the one before it, as I get kind of more of this world built up for me. I always forget how cool Wakanda is. Like conceptually and just like visually, this like Afrofuturist, like technologically advanced world that is also like still fully in touch with its roots and its culture and its customs. And the way those like blend so seamlessly together in every version of Wakanda I've seen, you know, from this to the movies to previous Marvel comics I've read. It's just it's so cool to see that.
Man, this is the one that I haven't actually read yet. I haven't tried yet. So okay, you're selling me. You're getting me. I mean, I didn't know Brian Hill was working on this, and I love Brian Hill's work. So you've sold me.
Yeah, it's really good. Take it from another Brian.
Okay.
This is the special
love,
club that unless you're called Brian, you can't promote other people called Brian. You know, it's like
it's a little known bylaw.
Right. Okay. Fine.
Brylaw. Okay.
A bylaw.
Good.
All right, wrap it up.
This is why I need to change
later.
my name, because it's really hard to find a Cavan club. You know, other than the literal Cavan club where the Beatles started, it's really difficult to find other Cavans to promote my work.
Oh, you know, we'd love to have you if you're considering a change.
Yeah, I think I could. You know, I think Brian would suit me.
There's a moment in this where Killmonger shows up, and Killmonger has been partnered up with Storm in this book.
Oh shit! Okay.
So he shows up, and the first thing we see him do is like drop down and throw like an axe wreathed in lightning at a guy, and then it flies back into his hand. And I'm like, oh, cool Thor impression. And then Aurora comes like, you know, floating down in all her majesty, as she always does. I thought that Mohawk Storm was the coolest storm you could have. This storm is cooler. She has these beautiful locks with like all these decorations and stuff, and it's just stunning, like perfect character design.
Oh man, Stefano Caselli. Right. Okay, I was trying to pick where that person's work was from, and they did a bunch of Fall of the House of X, Rise of Powers of 10, all that stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Her intro would have been my favorite like moment of this book if there hadn't also been a Black Panther mech in one panel. Where it truly is just like one moment where you see it like barely in action. Like it like floats down and lands and has like one move it does. And in my head, I was just kind of squealing because mechs are kind of my thing.
There should be more mechs in comics generally. Yeah.
Hard agree.
Yeah.
The antagonists in this book are the ultimate versions of Ra and Khonshu, and I don't fully understand what their deal is, but this book has me really curious to find out more about them, because like I know that they must have some kind of superpowers, or they wouldn't be Ra and Khonshu. They would just be two guys, but I don't really know what they are yet. And maybe I just missed something, or maybe it actually hasn't been explored yet, but they must have something, or else the maker wouldn't have chosen them to be essentially the rulers of Africa. And so this is them basically deciding that they can no longer have Wakanda be its own independent part of the continent, and now they want to lay claim to that as well. But it turns out that there's actually some kind of ancient secret, it's basically the counterpart to vibranium that is buried deep in Wakanda. It is to life what vibranium is to metal. So it's like this super versatile force that can create like rapid life growth.
Gotcha.
And so I'm very, very curious to see what Khonshu plans to do with that.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to hear that like Khonshu is showing up as a character rather than just like this specter for Moon Knight. So okay, that's this is the thing that I'm loving about the Ultimates line in general, is like the rewiring of like Marvel universe stuff that we all know and love in a way that like feels very fresh and at least to start, right? I mean, we'll see where it goes, but I've felt like every Ultimates book that I've picked up, this is the same with the Absolute line, is like every one of those I've picked up feels very fresh, to the point where it's not just like a minor twist on this idea or these characters. It's like a really fresh idea that is trying to take things in a new direction. So this is yet another Ultimates book that sounds very exciting to read and dig into.
Yeah, definitely. And there's another like super cool design aspect with his character specifically, where most of the time he's just a guy. You see his face, and that's it. But towards the end, we do see him in sort of like a battle suit, and the mask that he wears is this like midpoint between the classic Khonshu like skull bird head mask and almost like a predator faceplate. So it's much more like squat and compressed and darker. It's like a dark gray, almost black in coloration, but it looks sick as hell.
That's incredible.
Yeah, what about you, Mike?
Yeah, I was gonna say I've been slowly recovering. Those longtime listeners have known that my house has been in mass disrepair for the last 2 weeks, and now things are slowly getting back to normal. So it's nice. If anyone watching the video here, you can see I am currently trying to figure out how the comic book pages that I have are going to go up on my wall with masking tape, so that they don't end up looking like garbage when they're up there. And it'll be cool. Eventually, I will have a Dark Spectre character from the Department of Truth above my head, which will be really fun for work meetings during the day. But otherwise, I did sit down and read a bunch of comics. I got caught up. I was trying to get through my to read pile. I read a couple of the Absolute books. I read all through Minor Arcana 1 through 6 recently. Been meaning to just sit down and actually do that. And it's a new, I don't know, it's a very different Jeff Lemire story in some ways, but I'm not here to talk about that. It's just it's a book that I read. Be happy to talk with other people about it later. But the book I do want to talk about today that I read was Changeling Volume 1. This is by Tina Lugo from Silver Sprocket, or at least published by Silver Sprocket. It's ultimately a Western manga. It's a manga story written by someone in the West, and it is very much like a Dragon Ball, Naruto inspired, like, young person goes out into the world to try to become the very best, and they come across all these different things. Spoilers, it turns out they're the chosen one, and yada yada yada. All sorts of mysterious things are happening beyond them. But the story is about a young lichen, a half human, half wolf person who is trying to become what they call Heketi, which is basically like the highest honor of like a warrior within the lichen world that this person lives in. Their name is Luth, and the lichens are split up into 4 different factions, and so there's all this single and 2-page like world building things happening, kind of over explaining what's going on, so you can kind of get the setup for a tournament, setup for the different factions who don't like each other, and which ones are the stealth ones, and which ones are the action ones, and which ones live with the humans, and yada yada yada. It's like every trope you could imagine from like a 90s era or early 2000s era manga baked into a comic published in like 2024, 2023. I had a really good time reading this. It's like 68 pages, and it's truly just a perfect encapsulation of like black and white manga storytelling. It feels very, very, very influenced by Naruto. Having only read like 20 or so chapters or 30 or so chapters of Naruto, I can already smell like that book's influence on this one. But that is not a bad thing, right? 68 pages of like quick manga that like gets into like the bullshit of shonen storytelling is fantastic in my opinion. It takes no time getting to its final moment at the end of the volume, and I had a really, really good time reading it. I think like the Silver Sprocket digital subscription thing is constantly paying dividends, because I get access to not just this volume, but the next 2 volumes of this series, and they're digital PDFs that I get to download and I get to keep forever. So totally loving this, had a really good time with this. I have the next 2 volumes sitting for me in wait. Like volume 3 came out, and so because volume 3 came out, Silver Sprocket included the previous 2 volumes as part of my subscription. I think that's a killer deal. So yeah, if you're interested in some like non-Viz published manga or Kodansha published manga, Silver Sprocket has some pretty good stuff published by like US and beyond authors that are not necessarily from Japan. So yeah, really, really good. Had a really good time reading it. I don't know if you guys are interested in reading other manga, but if you want something really offbeat, I think Changeling Volume 1 is a perfect pick.
Yeah, it sounds super cool. And Kait confirmed that Volume 1 and 2 are on Hoopla. So I will definitely be checking that out probably immediately following this.
Yeah. I mean, the silver sprocket thing is, I don't know. I can't get enough of it. Every month I'm just like blessed with like 2 to 4 volumes of something. And I'm just like, everything is good. Everything is really fun to read. It's very different than I'm not like superhero comics, but it is great comics, in its own right.
I'm just looking at it. I'm very cross now that's only the subscription's only available in the US. But my bank balance is probably happy about this, but because the amount of subscriptions I have a month. But no, it does look amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and I honestly think that like, I don't know what the limitation is. I'm sure there's something with taxes and blah 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 blah. I'm sure there's a good reason for it, but honestly,
who knows what's happening with international trade at the minute? Let's face it.
for real though.
Yeah. I gotta imagine there's something about like selling digital goods across the, I don't know, but imagine they sell PDFs and stuff. I just think it's the subscription that's specific, and I'm guessing that's like a limitation of whoever their subscription provider is. But I mean, even then, I think like getting the first volume of this would be totally worth it just to check out, because I think it's really good. And if you have access to Hoopla or some other like library digital access, I don't know if they have that over in the UK, but like in the US at least, we have the Hoopla, which works really well. But yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about comic books that we're looking forward to reading next, comics that are new or old or something that is just on the top of your pile that you're trying to read. I want to shout out some of our folks hanging out with us on Discord today. Danny's going to be reading Exquisite Corpses, which I believe drops this week, if I'm not mistaken. And Avocado Kenobi is going to be reading Minor Arcana number 6. Let me know what you think of it. I have many thoughts about that series, so we'll talk on Discord. But let me bounce things over to Brian. What is on the top of your pile this week? What are you reading next?
It's more Ultimate stuff, Mike. Okay. This one is Ultimate X-Men, which if you've read any Ultimate stuff, you've probably read this Ultimate thing.
Sure. I mean, it's the Peach Momoko book, right?
Yeah. With writing and art by Peach Momoko, letters by Travis Lanham. I cannot get enough of Peach Momoko's art. Like, especially that watercolor style that she does is just so fun to look at. Like I'm never more likely to just get lost, just like staring at a panel, kicking my feet, just being like, "This is so cool."
Are you? I have to wonder, because I know you've played this, or maybe you still play it in Marvel Snap. Are there Peach Momoko cards that you can get? Because I know there's like Dan Hip and a couple of. Okay. I figured, because I know
some of those were my favorites.
Yeah. I mean, she just does fantastic work, right? Like, her art is just gorgeous. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I read Demon Days.
Yeah.
Back when that was coming out, and the way that she blended like Japanese folklore with like Marvel lore and Marvel characters to come up with this like super cool world in there was so much fun to read. And I'm really curious to see if there's going to be more, like if that folklore is also going to be part of this. But I really have no expectations for it, other than that I'm going to be staring dreamily at all the pages.
Yeah. I mean, I read the first 2 or 3 issues of it. And I've been meaning to sit down and go back and reread it now that like the trade is out, or at least the first arc is out. It follows one of the best characters that is introduced in recent history, right? So
it's Armor, right?
Yeah, it follows Armor. And I love that character so much, and I love what Peach does in the book with her. I just need to go back and actually read it. I'm still very bitter and brokenhearted about the end of Krakoa. So anytime I read anything with an X-Men title on it, I am just like, but what about what we had?
It's like seeing your ex out in public.
Exactly. It's like my ex's sister, right? That I'm just like hanging out with. Anyways, that's a weird comparison. Let me know what you think, Brian. I'm very curious.
Yeah, especially with Storm showing up in the Black Panther book, that like made me realize, I have no idea what's going on with the X-Men in the Ultimate universe, because of course I don't. It's new and I haven't read any of it.
Right. Be curious to see where they go, given where the X-Men landed last time there was an Ultimate Universe. But I think it's it's too early for us to even start speculating on that. But yeah, Cavan, what about you? What do you have up next on your to read pile?
So I've also got Exquisite Corpses I'm looking forward to this week. James Tynion horror. Yep, I'm in. Done.
Yeah, right.
Me and my wife have just binged the latest series of Daredevil on Disney in a week. Absolutely loved it, and I've been waiting to finish that before I jump into my buddy Charles Soule's Cold Day in Hell, which is his sort of old man. Again, I'm doing the old man, old
Yeah.
man Daredevil thing. I'm looking forward to that. I think I love Charles's take on Daredevil at the best of times, so I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I bought last week, I've not got around to, is Fantastic Four Fanfare, an anthology. Now, this is the new anthology series, mini-series that's come out. Obviously, the lead up to the movie. As I said, I'm a massive FF fan. Have been since the 80s, and John Byrne and She-Hulk in the group and that kind of thing. So one thing that I've always liked about the Fantastic Four is that usually it's only one book a month, so it's easy to keep hold of. But obviously,
Sure.
with the film coming, and I'm again beside myself about the film, and I'm just sort of desperate just to please be good.
Right.
I'm enjoying the fact that we are getting a little bit of a burst of, and I think a way of doing that, an anthology book is probably the best way of supporting a regular title as well, because you can dip in. So I bought that last week, and it's just still sitting there. And beyond that, going back to stuff, I found in the library the other day the two volumes of the Garth Ennis Demon book from I don't even know when that was, the DC Demon book from back in the 80s, 90s, I think it is.
Okay.
And I just remember at the time just being in love with it, because it was that typical British invasion type book where it was like 2000 AD was licensing DC characters, and so I'm a
I love that, yeah.
I'm a massive Demon fan, always have been. I remember reading it at the time. I'd not picked it up since. And so, yeah, just seeing it there, it was just like, yep, having both of those. So I'm going to sit and binge that. But yeah, it's definitely got that kind of feel. Even looking through the art, it's just like, yeah, it is 2000 AD, does DC, which, shouldn't work, but always does.
Interesting. So
that cover is so cool too.
Is that whole book written in like poetry? The way that the demon?
Yeah. I mean, so basically, most of the time, the demon and Etchkin rhymes, and other than when he's written by John Byrne in Blood of the Demon, who just basically went, no, not doing that. And Blood of the Demon is so gory and so over the top, as is the Ennis stuff as well.
Sure.
But yeah, it was like, by that point, obviously John Byrne looked at it and went, no, there is no way on heaven or earth that I'm rhyming every it's all in rhyming couplet. I mean, it must be an absolute nightmare. But what I remember about the Garth Ennis stuff is that it's like Shakespeare basically got a bit drunk and just decided, right, we're going to have him saying anything he can, and so it's like it's one of those things. It's been so long since I read it. I had a quick flick through the first couple of issues in the trades, and because they're big books as well, and I was like, no, it's standing up. That's good, because there's always the worry that this was something I read in whenever it was, the 90s, and I was like, I've always remembered it being good, and then just seeing them both there on the shelf, I was like, yeah, I'm doing that. So yeah, I'll have to come back and let you know what I think of it, but. It's got the name of the artist is just escaped me, but it's got sort of slightly cartoony style to it. It's just it's well worth picking up if you can go back, or you've got the old DC, if you've got the DC app or anything, go and find the issues. You can't get the John Byrne one really anywhere now. So if you ever see some issues of that, it's worth picking up because it is fun. It's just it's not the demon that we knew. Let's put it that way.
I mean, Etrigan is always like, it's a character that for some reason I foray into DC over the last like 3 or 4 years, just been trying all sorts of different stuff. Our buddy Paul runs this show on our Patreon called The Better Batmobile, and at one point Etrigan the demon shows up in a Batman book, and like because Ennis or excuse me Grant Morrison, excuse me. I always get their names confused. Grant Morrison, pulls Etrigan in, to try to tell part of a Batman story. And every time that character shows up, like I've been reading a lot of Constantine recently. Every time he shows up, I'm just like, what a funny character. I love this so much. I love all the rhyming. I love the insanity, like the brutality of the character. Man, you're selling me on this, because I always
Yeah.
find that character to be fun, but I've never read any books just about Etrigan. So
yeah. They're well worth it. And I think my first ever Etrigan story was back in, I want to say, Detective Comics, when Norm Bremfell was the artist. Again, early 90s, and Alan Grant was writing. And it was just a one and done issue with Etrigan and Batman. Because again, people forget he's a Gotham hero. You know, he lives in Gotham. You know, so
right.
And I just remember, that entire run, Norm's art is just incredible, and there's so many images that are just seared into my brain, for dramatic reasons, but also for this reason. They have this really intense issue, and basically Etrigan kisses Batman on the cheek. And the panel is so beautifully done. It's Batman looking straight at the camera. His eyes are wide. He can't quite believe what's happening. And Etrigan's coming in from the side in profile and kissing him. And it's just, it came out of nowhere in the issue. And whenever I think of the Demon now, I pretty much think of that image.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I say I cannot tell you the issue number. I can't tell you, but I can tell you the cover. The cover is a very traditional Batman up by a gargoyle and the demons beside him, and I can just see it so vividly.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it's he's always fun, and I hope there's going to be more Demon coming, because it's always fun. I think the last time really was Demon Knights. Written by Paul Cannell in the New 52, which is again a great way of dealing with the character. But no, he's brilliant.
Well, I'm hesitant to search demon kissing Batman on Google, but maybe I'll be able to find it.
I posted it in Discord.
Oh, Brian already found it. Okay, perfect.
There you go. It's the look. I mean, Brayfield's Batman is how I think of Batman pretty much in my head, and the expression on his face is just perfect.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That's exactly what you sold. That's exactly it.
That's amazing. Well, let me talk about a book that I'm going to be reading next. That I'm excited for. It's actually coming out this week as well. I mean, I would pick Gwenpool #1, but I already happen to take a look at it. But we'll get there. I'm going to be reading Dark Regards #1. This is by Dave Hill, Artyom Tomplin on art. I mean, if you read I Hate This Place, you will love the look of this book, because it same vibes, very just dark and gothic. This is from Oni Press. And like I said, anything Artyom Tomplin is working on, I'm going to pick up, because their work was so good in I Hate This Place that I'm like, I just need to see more of whatever weird shit they're going to be doing next. And looking at Dark Regards #1, that seems to be exactly what this is. The story is Dave Hill is a comedian, and the story follows a fictitious, I think, Dave Hill and his first band. They set out as a rock band in high school. They failed miserably, and years later, Dave has made a new life for himself as a rising star in the New York comedy scene, a career where getting laughed at on stage is the entire point and not just a tragic consequence. But when Dave's metal ambitions are reawakened by the uber self-serious satanic genre of Norwegian black metal, Dave creates a ridiculously hyperbolic alter ego and a band to match that. Together reignite the spark of his forgotten rock and roll fantasy. But when Dave's internet-fueled rumors of witch taint, a metal band, quote, so extreme that you must remove all sharp objects from the immediate area, when their music is played, spreads all the way from Europe, his story will spiral dangerously out of control as Norway's most extreme black metal butchers come to reap their revenge, which, like, that sounds bonkers, sounds hilarious, sounds right up my alley in terms of just the absurd type of stuff I love to read. And I think Artyom Tomplin is going to be a perfect match for this. So I don't really care what this book is. I know that it's going to look good. So I'm excited for at least #1. And yeah, super bonkers. And yeah, I'm totally here. Did you guys read I Hate This Place by chance?
I haven't, but now you've sold me on that one. I'm going to have to go back and...
I Hate This Place is amazing. It's like two women go out to a cabin, and they that was like inherited from the family, one of their families, and it turns out that the cabin is haunted and the forest is haunted, but like, are the demons and ghosts real? Why is this cabin protected? There's all sorts of like mystery horror vibes that come out of it. If I'm not mistaken, this is a Kyle Starks book, so it's very funny, but also absurd and very absurd at the same time. Yeah, I really, really love that book. Like, it's funny from start to finish. Every time you think you know where the book is going, it takes a zag in a direction that is both perfect and unpredictable while also hilarious. So, like, highly recommend that. It's very dark, very gory because it's a horror book, but at the same time, very funny. Yeah, I don't. Kyle Stark, on the whole, has been taking this weird turn towards like darker books. For instance, he had a what's the what's the furthest place from here is not him. It's the Serial Killers All Live on a Cul-de-sac book. The book that I'm forgetting the name of right now. But he's had a bunch of these serial killer books and books about murder and stuff. And I'm just like, aren't you the same guy that wrote Rock Candy Mountain? Like one of the funniest comics I've ever read. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Horror and comedy go so well together. I mean, that,
Totally.
because they're the same structure a lot of the time. It's build up and it's payoff, and so and there's a reason that a lot of horror films are funny, and it's not just because people need to laugh because they're absolutely traumatized, but again, it is because when you break down the story structure, they are so scene structures, they are so similar. It's all about taking to an edge and then bringing something in that you don't expect. And so good horror and good comedy is why when it's done so well together, it really works, because they're the same beast.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. I will say that. The other books I was thinking of was Those Not Afraid and Where Monsters Lie. If you're looking for more Kyle Stark stuff, that's really good. But anyways, that's what I'm reading. I'm very excited to dig into this new Oni Press book, Dark Regards. But we're also here to wrap things up, I guess, to talk about Gwenpool #1. So, Cavan, you gave us a very quick synopsis about Gwenpool. Could you tell us, like, what is this book about? Why should people get excited? I mean, you've worked all over the board. So tell us why we should jump into Gwenpool #1 this week.
So if you don't know who Gwenpool is, she's a character who's been around for a good few years now at Marvel. She is definitely an enigma. No one really has explained what she is and how she does it. She is a character.
I was hoping you could do that.
As if. I did ask, and they were like, no. Depending on which of her backstories you want to believe, because she has rewritten and rebooted herself repeatedly. She is a character who knows she's in a comic book. So far, so Deadpool. The difference is she literally fell into one. So she is from our universe, or a universe very near it, and has been a Marvel fan all her life. She's read everything. She knows pretty much, except for Deadpool, hilariously. And she falls into the Marvel universe. And so she knows how to be a superhero, or she thinks she does, and she also knows everyone's secrets because she knows everyone's backstories. And this has been a character who's had a few series along the way, and usually the shtick with Gwenpool is that she realizes if she gets cancelled, she'll vanish from existence until someone reboots her. And she has the ability to jump outside of panels to see into gutter space, to see what lies ahead, so she can literally see her last issue coming quickly. And so there's been a lot of, she remade herself into a mutant. There have been a lot of different ways she's tried to survive. In this story, she faces a particular comic trope, which is the returning the returning character who comes back as a crazed killer. And in this case, the crazed killer isn't Bucky, but it is Gwen Stacy. And yes, that's Gwen Stacy. So someone has dug up Gwen Stacy's corpse, has resurrected her in a Weapon X program, and has turned her into a Wolverine. But a Wolverine with the same claws that Ryan Reynolds had in the first time he ever played Deadpool. But let's not talk about that film. So it's funny because the book has been very much promoted and marketed on the entire, oh, look, it's Gwen Stacy and she's a killer. So much so that people have missed the fact that it's a Gwenpool book. Right.
I was expecting a totally different book when I saw the cover, right?
Yeah. And for the first 5 pages, you get the book you thought you were going to get. And then it goes back to being a Gwenpool book. And that is sort of the point. Gwenpool knows as soon as this hits what's going on. And it's been very interesting to me because there was a certain amount of backlash when we announced this, from people going, what the hell are you doing? Look at this. This is a 90s reject. And I was going, you're literally quoting the comic. You just don't realize it yet, because it's pretty much everything that Gwenpool says inside the comic. So there is something happening to Gwenpool's corner of the universe, of the Marvel universe. The tone is literally shifting page on page, and becoming darker. We're having a lot of fun with, at the end of the day as well, it's got Spider-Man in it. And, you know, that for me, he wasn't in my original pitch for this story. They came to me with the idea of Gwen Stacy. I put together a story thinking, there is no way they're going to let me put Spider-Man into this. I was like, if that story happens with him meeting this Gwen, that's going to happen elsewhere. And they were like, where's Spider-Man when the pitch came in? So I was like, okay, I get the crown jewels. Brilliant. I shall go for that. But again, then the thing, this isn't a Spider book. This is the Gwenpool book.
Right.
And so it's very much trying to work out, how do I do a Spider-Man book where he's not the most important character on the page? You know, he's very much the guest star. And a guest star throughout the entire series, but it's definitely a Gwenpool book. So I think there's been a lot of fans who have been confused about what it is. I think there's a lot of Gwenpool fans who are worried that it's going to be so different to what has gone before. But hopefully people will recognise the Gwenpool when, you know, they'll see on the page, you know. And from me personally, she's just such a joy to write, because I love an Easter egg, and her entire dialogue are Easter eggs, you know. It's just like, it's, you know, and it's also a weird thing that, obviously, I'm a Brit. I grew up with British comics, especially British humour comics, which no longer really exist except for one, the Beano now. And a tradition in that has been for 100 years that the characters talk to the reader and the reader talks back. There's literally moments when they have reader's voice on a balloon and it comes in. So for me, this has been second nature. You know, the fact that, you know, I used to because I used to write for the Beano as well, and I used to write characters that I called Banana Man, which is the man of Peel, who's if you don't know, he's a young boy who eats a banana and becomes Banana Man. It's a whole thing, look it up. And he regularly had arguments with the reader. And so it just seems very natural to be writing Gwenpool, because that's what I was doing years ago, before I got into writing American comics. And she's just so much fun, because, yeah, she can absolutely reference, you know, every line she is a reference to the real world. And the best bit about it is everyone else's reaction around her. And she's teamed up largely with Kate Bishop in this as well. And Kate's just used to the nonsense that comes spilling out of her mouth. And there's a moment where, again, this is no spoilers, really, but she calls Spider-Man PP. Gwenpool calls him PP at one point. And because obviously Gwenpool knows who he is. And Kate's sitting there going, PP, what? And then she's just like, oh, we'll just get on with it. Because she accepts the madness that is Gwenpool, because it's one of her best friends. And that's actually one of the great things about that relationship, is that Kate's just like, all right, whatever, come on, let's do this. So issue 1 comes out this week. It sets the world up. It's fun that actually, I was surprised how much we were leaning into the Gwen Stacy of the marketing, but it's actually, I think, reading back, because this was all written before we even marketed issue 1, so the book was pretty much done. So when I realised we were leaning so heavily into everyone knowing who that character is, Weapon X-31, because, you know, Gwen Stacy first appeared in Spider-Man issue 31. Welcome to Gwenpool. It's actually fun that no one else in the book knows what's happening, except for the reader knows exactly who that character is. And so it's like, I've been comparing it to, in the last Mission Impossible film, when they did that thing when they showed the bike stunt going off the film, and I'm going, why are you doing that? Because that's obviously the biggest stunt of the film. And then when you see that Mission Impossible film, you realise for 10 minutes what's going to happen. And, you know, Ethan Hunt doesn't, and that's the fun bit. And so, at first I was a bit like, oh, we're telling everyone, are we? And I was like, oh, no, this could work. And hopefully it'll work in the same way. So everyone hopefully is going to be waiting for the moment that mask comes off and Gwenpool realises who she's looking at. It is quite difficult writing a book where everyone's called Gwen, but, you know, I mean, talk about everyone's called Brian. My scripts were like, that Gwen, no, that one over there. And there's a point in one of the future issues when Spider-Man's trying to say, Gwen, no, not you, no, my Gwen. But she's not my Gwen. Is she my Gwen? I don't know what's going on. So, yeah, it's the Gwenpool of it all.
I love the first few pages give us exactly what I thought Gwenpool was when she premiered back in 2015 or whatever it was. I thought, like, oh, this is like Spider-Gwen, this is Gwenpool, it's Gwen Stacy if she was Deadpool.
Yeah, exactly that, which I think obviously Gwenpool spent the last few series going, I'm not that person. And now there's someone literally going, yes, you are, but she's not me. And so, it's yeah, it's a lot for people to get their head around. It was a lot for me when I had the meeting with Jordan, the editor, and he Jordan White, and he sort of said, this is what we're thinking. And I'm like, really? Oh, is that where we go? Okay, let's do it. And it was like we're literally playing to everyone's hands who thought it's just Gwen Stacy. It's like, yep, but it is, but it isn't. But is it? We don't know. We do know, but you'll find out. And that's pretty much the tone of the book.
I mean, I'm so excited for Edge of Gweniverse or whatever we're going to call it, once we get there. Because it sounds like that is the path we're going with the multiple Gwens. But yeah, I'm curious, like, how much digging into Gwenpool's backstory, I guess, did you go back and read the previous dozen other books that came into this, or were you kind of just given a brief to go into the book? What's your history with the character?
I'd already read. I think the Chris Hastings original run is one of the best Marvel runs ever. It's brilliant. It's just genius. And so I'd read that, and I'd read Gwenpool Strikes Back. I hadn't read West Coast Avengers, so basically I went and reread the entire first run again, and then the following miniseries. I then went and read West Coast Avengers, so I caught up completely again, which was no hardship. So. And yeah, I mean, again, my first pitch was pretty much using every character that we had in that first run. But again, this is part of being a wider universe. And then we love this, but we also need to have Kait in it for reasons. And I'm like, okay, we're having Kait in it, And again, that's not a bad thing for the character, because they've been Avengers together and they know each other. And Kait's in the original run and all those kind of things. My first reaction is always to go back to my favorite version of a character and try and sort of reinvent that, but change it along the way. So that's what I was doing. But again, it's part of being a writer in a big universe. You put stuff through and they go, yeah, that's great, but we need this to be there, and you can't put that person in because they're over there. And I've worked in Star Wars for the last 10 years.
Say.
So I'm very used to people going, I know you want to do that, but you can't do that. And we can't tell you why half the time. And then there was one point in Star Wars where I managed to write the beginning of Rogue One without realizing it, put it in a novel. And they came back saying, the beginning of this novel is great, but you can't do that, and we can't tell you why. And so then I went to see Rogue One in the cinema a year later and went, oh, right, that's why I can do that. And I'm expecting there's going to be things like that with Gwenpool as well.
Sure.
But yeah, but again, there's nothing to complain about having Kait and Spider-Man and Jeff the Shark as your team.
And Jeff.
So
yeah. I was going to say, I think there was, I haven't read a lot of Gwenpool myself. I think the only real stuff I've touched was West Coast Avengers, which I really liked. And, digging into some information about this book to see what other folks were thinking. I saw a lot of folks hoping for Kait, hoping for Jeff, hoping for a little bit of West Coast Avengers vibe. So I think that's very exciting to hear that they're going to get at least a little bit, plus bonus Spider-Man, which is a funny thing to consider. Maybe Spider-Man would be the selling point, but I think it's the other way around here. He's just kind of a bonus add-in.
But let's also be fair about this and be real. Having Spider-Man in a book doesn't hurt sales, so, and
totally,
Gwenpool is a success in the fact that, she's now on her third miniseries. She's been in Avengers, she's been, in the X books, she's been everywhere. It helps sometimes to have someone swinging on a web, and that's part of what being in the Marvel universe is about. And so the hope is that people will come in because they expect it to be, Gwen Stacy, but as Deadpool. They, expect it to be a Spider-Man book, but hopefully they also get the fact of like, oh no, this is what Gwenpool is, and then they'll go back and read. For everything I do, my hope is always that they'll go back and read the other stuff as well, because, that's everything we talked about earlier on about why we love comics and why we've been reading these characters, whatever, in X-Men and Spider-Man and Superman, and, it's because there's that history baked into it, and if we can go back and, the greatest fear I had was sending it to Chris and Heather Antos, who's the original editor and creator of it, because obviously I was literally playing with their baby, and they both came back and said, oh yeah, we were worried at first, but now we see what you're doing. And it was like, yes, that's what I'm trying to tell everyone. wait to see what we're doing, because I hope it's going to be both something new, but also something that's very much saying, look, this is celebrating this character.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, Brian and I had the wonderful chance to take a look at this book, and I can say, like, this first issue flies in, like, a really good way. Like, I was blasting through the issue, having a great time. Love the bits, love the jokes, love the twist near the end here. I mean, like, it's a solid number one, and that's all you can hope for with a new number one for a beloved character, is that I can get to the end and go, yeah, I really should read number two. Like, I'm hyped for number two now,
Good. Well, that's obviously what I like to hear. And I think a lot of that's got to do with Stefano on art as well, Stefano Nessi. It was.
I was just going to ask, yeah.
It was one of the things I kept saying, when we need to nail this artist, because it needs to be someone who can do dark, grimdark, type of comics, but also can get the more animated side of Gwenpool as well, and I asked him to do some odd things in this issue. It was like there's and I'd never worked with him before. This is one of those moments when you're put together. And at the time, when I wrote issue one originally, Stefano wasn't on the book, so I went back and after talking to him, made some tweaks to the script to sort of like lean into what he can do. But yeah, he's absolutely nailed that side of the world does, as the issue goes on, the world is getting grimmer and darker, but Gwenpool is still Gwenpool in the middle of it. And that was the biggest thing I kept saying, is like, she cannot change. It was like her character is the center of this, and so she has to remain true to herself as everything else is tilting around her. And that's definitely what we were trying to do with this book.
Yeah, no, I really like the art in this book quite a bit. I mean, like you were saying, there's too many Gwens at some point, and I was like, wait, which blonde person am I looking at? There's a little bit of that, but I love that so much. Like, and I think that's the fun of it, right? Clearly, like they're supposed to be like, who knows? But I think that the action is fantastic in this. I mean, like the big action set piece, which I'll leave quiet here, but the big action set piece at the center of this issue is really, really fun. It's classic Marvel stuff that I never get sick of, and I think like they totally nailed just the absurdity and size and scale of things, and in a way that I don't know, I love about big action set pieces.
I think it's fair to say that Gwenpool has never been as big as she is in this issue.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
I just live for these. I live for these puns, and it's like this book gives them to me repeatedly. It's like most of the time you'd be writing stuff, and you go, you can't put that in a book. It's too cheesy for words. And then you go, I'm writing Gwenpool, and she knows why she's saying it. It's like, I can't say it. It's amazing, And I love the facts as well. And you see this in the other runs of Gwenpool. It starts to rub off on the other characters. It starts to, they start thinking themselves as stories, and it's just like, oh, that's interesting. Because that's at the end of the day what Gwenpool is all about. Gwenpool is about stories. If there could be a personification of, like we have eternity and death and all those, if there's a personification of story in the Marvel universe, it's Gwendolyn Poole, because she knows comics backwards, and she knows she can see what's happening around her. And that's the fun part of it. And part of the challenge when you're writing is to keep surprising her as well, because she's always one step ahead in a lot of ways, just because she has read everything. So it's like writing, it's different things. So I've written things like Doctor Who in the past and Sherlock Holmes, and the trouble with those characters is that they're geniuses, and I'm not, so I have to make them look really good. But Gwen is in a different way. She's not a genius, but she's a story genius, and she knows tropes. And so that's the fun of this. It's like trying to keep her on her toes as well. So it doesn't just become, which is actually part of the story. Gwen is getting a bit like cocky, at the beginning of this story. She's like, well, you're so, there's an Avengers class event going on. I'm an Avenger. I know how these things work. I've seen the films. So she gets pulled down a peg or two as the series goes on.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you mentioned like her being aware of tropes and why you want to take her by surprise, because one of the constants has always been Gwen Stacy is dead.
Yeah.
And so this is a perfect example.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So Gwen, as soon as Gwenpool sees Gwen Stacy, she realizes how important that is. you know.
Yeah.
And you've got the fun thing as well of Spider-Man sees Gwen Stacy and knows what that means. As far as, you know, Hawkeye, Kate Bishop's going, she's just a blonde chick, you know, so she has no, you know, and someone has gone to find a blonde chick and dug them up and turned them into a Wolverine. So whoever's done this knows who Gwen Stacy is and knows what that means for comics. So, you know, there are so many different things to think about. But Kate is my joy in this because she's just like, what? It's like, why is this important? And she's, I mean, at the end of the day, Kate's a detective as well. So she looks at Spider-Man and goes, there is obviously something going on here, but it's not my circus. I don't want anything to do with this. Gwen knows. So I'm just going to go with that because she realizes that something else is going on. So yeah, it's been fun. Let's put it that way. And yeah, the stuff, in a minute, Stefano's working on the last couple of issues and the where this goes, and we started big, pun intended. Where we go with it is, I was worried about him, how he's going to go with it, but you know, he does it. It hasn't killed him yet. It hasn't killed him yet, so that's the good thing.
That's great. That's great. Well, so I guess is this a limited run series, or do you guys foresee a future?
It's five issues at the minute. So I mean, obviously, with all these things, I'd love to come back and write more.
Yeah.
I think she is the character that will not die. I mean, Gwenpool. I mean, Gwen Stacy will die, but then she'll come back a lot. But yeah, Gwenpool is like, she always finds a way back. And yeah, I mean, the hope of all these things is that, you know, we'll bring in new people as well. They'll realise what's been there in the past, and they'll want to see more of her in the future. Totally.
Well, that's very, very exciting. I mean, I'm looking forward to reading more of this. I think that first issue is a banger, and it totally sells the series for me. Brian, I don't know, last thoughts before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I mean, I have not read any Gwenpool stuff in the past, but now I'm definitely going to have to go back and check it out.
I'll go and read the first. The first run is so good because basically she decides that the only way to do it is to really be like a Deadpool type character and shoot lots of people because she can do it and it's comics and it doesn't matter. And then she gets realized that she's a baddie and she's like, oh, that's something that's happened. So the entire arc they had with her in that first series is just superb. And it has some of the best and worst side characters as well. A cast of like also, you know, Z-less characters that become a group that you really care about. Because, you know, they are people who don't have the best powers in the world, and suddenly that's who she's around. Yeah, I would recommend to anyone to go back and read the original run. It's spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's extremely popular for a reason because there's been damn good comic books in the past for her. So, well, yeah, I guess, folks, you can pick this issue up, Gwenpool #1, on the shelves this Wednesday as this episode comes out. Hopefully your shop's got it. If not, get that, you know, second printing because I'm sure it's going to go to that. But I guess, Cavan, where could people check you out on the internet if they want to ask you any questions, they want to talk to you about Gwenpool or anything else you're working on? I mean, I have 1,000,001 questions about Doctor Who and Star Wars that I'd love to pick your brain about, but we have to wrap up here. Where can people find you on the internet?
Probably the best place is my newsletter / blog, because yes, I've gone back to a blog because in this world of who knows where we're supposed to be posting these days and yada, yada, yada. So Cav letter, just to really, you know, because at the end of the day, I'm obviously a Batman fan and everything's got to have the word Cav in front of it now in my house, you know, sitting at my Cav desk, at my Cav chair. So cavletter.com, it's a newsletter, it's a blog, it's full of nonsense about Lego and various Universal horror and stuff. But yeah, that's probably the best place to come and find me. And yeah, ask me questions and I will answer them, especially about Doctor Who. You know, every conversation. It's become a joke in meetings with me that they time how long it takes. And I really thought it earlier on because you were talking about Afrofuturism and Wakanda. And last night's episode of Doctor Who was the first ever Doctor Who Afrofuturism episode. So I was going, cool. It's like that thing on Doctor Who. I was like, no, come on, let's just remember why we're here.
Right. Well, we'll end this episode, maybe talk for a few minutes afterwards about that, because I'm curious about all the Daleks you have behind you, but we don't have time to get into that.
No.
We'll put all the links to everything in the show notes here for everybody. Thank you again, Kevin, for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm super excited to read more of this Gwenpool series, and maybe I'll finally dig into some High Republic stuff, just to see what's out. What's out there. You've probably done some good work on that, right? I
hope so. And there is a lot of it now, so there's a lot to dig into.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, once Andor ends, I don't know if I need more Star Wars, and maybe that's where I go after that. So, but anyways, I'll say thank you to Brian for joining us today. Thank you to Kait for proof listening. Thank you to everyone listening live on Discord. You're all fantastic human beings. Thank you to Zander for editing this episode. I think next week's episode is it's a big one, if I'm not mistaken. This is Meredith McLaren is going to be on the show with us. We're going to be talking about Black Cloak and Crumble, all these other books that Meredith's been working on, and probably a little bit about her page that she had in the zine. So make sure to check that out. Make sure to tune in live on Discord with us. But I think that's going to do us for this week. So thank you all for listening. Until next time, comics are good, and so are you.